Wait. If we're not recording.
Now we're recording. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me from opening his beer because he doesn't think we're recording Boulevard, big round of applause for my host companion, Sejohn.
Yeah, the worst part is I was opening a seltzer water, and nobody's ever going to believe that now.
I believe it. And here's why I believe it, ladies and gentlemen. Because if he were opening a beer, he'd be proud of that. The fact that he went out of his way to say, I was opening a seltzer water, that's how I know it's true.
No, yeah,
How I know
I'm a little
true.
beered out at the moment. I'm making a chili tonight that has a beer base to it, so I've been drinking and cooking all day.
So to be clear, though, is it White Claw or is it just like Schweppes?
It is the Kroger brand, but yeah, it's not White Claw. No, I'm not. I'm not breaking the law with the claw or whatever their fucking nonsense slogan is.
The best hard seltzer is by Two Roads. It has the dumbest name. I will be the first person to say that. H2 Roads is the name of their seltzer.
Oh, does that only work? Okay.
It doesn't work at all.
Really? No.
And it actually has a fruit base somehow. It's more of a wine than just like a flavored water.
Like a sparkling wine,
It's like, I wouldn't consider it a sparkling wine because the alcohol content, it's still like only around 4 ABV. But it tasted delicious.
Watered down sparkling wine, then?
Yeah, okay. I guess, I don't know. But they're like, it's just seltzer water, but it's pink because we use real fruit. And I'm like, they use real fruit though. How can it be the same as seltzer water? It's delicious though.
Yeah. That's good. Have you tried the Boston Marathon beer yet?
No.
The 26.2. It is a beer that is made by the foundation that is supposedly supporting. I say supposedly because I don't know enough about them, and sometimes these corporations are
corporations.
What's the charity? No, these charity groups are a little questionable sometimes. So I don't want to tacitly endorse them and then find out that they're actually only giving 2% of the proceeds to the Boston Marathon bombing survivors. But essentially, that's the story behind this beer, right? But their big twist, their big hook for it, is they make it with seawater.
Okay, I could get behind that. That doesn't bother me.
You can tell they make it with at least salt water. I don't know if they go full on seawater like they claim, but it is very clearly a saltwater beer, and it's interesting. I think as somebody that grew up in the Ocean State, I appreciate it in a way that maybe some other people out here in Utah don't.
Is it chewy? Is that how you know? Because saltwater taffy is made with saltwater and it's chewy as fuck.
Yeah, that's how you can tell. It's the chunkiness of ocean water that you can really taste on the back end.
It's the brine shrimp.
Yeah,
brine shrimp.
Just floating in it. Ahoy!
Ahoy! Ahoy! Oh, what are we doing? We're doing a podcast, and that's what this is, the Say Report. I don't know. We got a bunch of followers today on Twitter. So if you're one of our new followers and listeners, thank you for coming to the Say Report, a show about everything. And occasionally we talk about beer because one of us is drinking seltzer water. I've done most of Sober October. I'll say that with pride.
What? Well, wait a minute. I didn't realize we were doing that. I could have participated in this.
Well, so the only reason I'm doing Sober October is because 12 days went by without me having a beer. And then I'm like, I might as well finish it off.
Well, I could never do a full month of October anyway. My birthday is at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I would just,
trust me, Sejohn, trust me. It comes off tomorrow. Because I have a birthday party that I'm going to tomorrow. Not yours, but it's not your birthday tomorrow. So
I thought you guys might throw me a party.
Yeah, we're having a big party for Sejohn. He's not invited. Everybody in Rhode Island's going to get around. We're all going to do shots of Midori.
And talk about how happy you are.
And how happy we are. Man, if Sejohn were here, he'd be telling us why we're doing shots of Midori.
And nobody wants that?
No, I mean, it's a birthday memory that I will forever have, is doing shots of Midori in that tiny little URI apartment to celebrate Jamie's birthday?
I don't remember.
It was Jamie or Pat's. I think it was Jamie because it was before they all lived together. And we went out to Seven Moons for sushi. And then we did that Midori toast thing that you're such a big fan of. I say it like I don't love it, but I do love it. I enjoy it a lot. It's just straight Midori. Do people really drink it? Is it just David Tennant in Fright Night Remake?
I didn't think people drank straight like Kahlua or Irish cream, but then my mom at the holidays this year was just like, "Oh yes, I've just been just doing Kahlua on ice," and I'm like, "That's great. Like, I'm down for that if I'm allowed to." I just didn't realize I was allowed.
I think you're allowed to drink anything as long as you're not sad.
Well, not bleach.
Well, I meant alcohol-wise. I don't think that there's any... I was specifically saying there's no rules for how alcohol is supposed to be taken.
I don't have many rules with my drinking, but one of them is definitely don't drink bleach.
Yes, I'll agree to the don't drink bleach rule. That feels like... That's probably... I know that there are 10 commandments, but I have to imagine that there's like an appendices of like lesser commandments.
Well, I mean, especially... Yeah, I mean, especially if you consider that the whole point of the Ten Commandments was to give guidance to people that like needed it or they were all going to get killed, right? And then we could definitely add some to that list. Don't eat Tide Pods is definitely on that list now, right?
I mean, that's the same as don't drink bleach, because Tide Pods contain bleach.
If it goes under your sink, then don't even think about consuming it.
Unfortunately, animals like the taste of radiator fluid. That's the weirdest thing from a Captain Planet. It's antifreeze. It's not radiator fluid. It's antifreeze. And it's like, make sure that if you spill something in your garage, you clean it up because your pets will drink it and die. Jeez. The power is yours.
Man.
Guy said it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, once again, you have to think about. If there's a rule out there that you see somewhere posted, you have to consider the fact that that's there because somebody at one point didn't. Yeah.
Somebody broke this rule, and that's the only reason it is a rule.
Right.
I mean, like the Devon Decker rules at Coventry High School. I don't think that there would be 3 rules named after me if I hadn't done the things that I did.
That's probably a good bet.
I mean, I don't know if they're actually called that, but I ran into a teacher years and years after graduation. She was playing in a cover band at a bar.
Excellent.
And she bought me...
Teachers have other lives, people.
Yeah.
People.
I mean, like, this is like... I was like 23. And I bought her a drink and, like, thank you, like, for being my teacher and for dealing with my bullshit. And she's like, I need to know if it's true that the Devon Decker rules are actually inspired by you. And I'm like, what Devon Decker rules? This is a weird conversation we're having. And it's 1 superlative per student, because there was a heavy belief that I campaigned for the 5 superlatives that I won, when in actuality people just nominated me for superlatives. The only thing I ever campaigned for was Homecoming King, and even then, not really. I just made sure that everybody knew my name because it was a school-wide vote, not just a class-wide vote. So I figured if every freshman knew my name, when a piece of paper went in front of them for Homecoming King, they'd check the name that they knew. Which is ideally what I think the point of it is, right? Is like the quarterback is nominated because everybody knows the quarterback's name. But, you know, we didn't have a great football program.
I believe it's a term for that, Devon. It's called a popularity contest. And yes, that's exactly what it is.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true. Yes. But I don't feel like I made myself popular. I literally, I went in on the first day of school, and every freshman, I was like, hi, I'm Devon Decker. If you ever need anything, look me up.
I need to break this science down. We need to take a moment here. And
please do. I'm all about it.
What exactly is the difference between everybody knowing who you are and being popular? Like, what exactly is the idea there?
It's
like,
the difference between fame and infamy.
Okay.
Just because everybody knows who you are doesn't mean that you're popular. People have to also like you. So by going out there basically like a Walmart greeter and like showing this friendly face and saying to these freshman students, I know high school can be scary, so if you ever need help navigating it, I'm Devon Decker. This is where I hang out every day. And do not be afraid to come up and talk to me about anything. I am there for you.
I would put one small twist on this. I think there has to be an element of, it doesn't necessarily have to be that they like you, but that they need you to like them. They need to feel like it's important that you like them. Because there's plenty of popular people that I knew that people didn't like, but for some reason or another... That's infamy,
by the way, while we're talking about the science behind popularity.
So then it completely destroys your argument. I don't think you need to be liked to be popular. I think it is the idea that you are well known and it is important that your name endorses mine. That's what makes you popular.
Okay. I don't know. I didn't really...
I knew a lot of popular people that people did not like.
I guess that's true. It's one of those things where, like, I ate at every lunch table. I mean, we talked about how I was like a fringe dweller. I believe that's what you called me once in college.
Yeah, sure. You lived on the edge, literally just on the edges of every group.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It was just like one of those things. But like, I considered that active campaigning because as a freshman, I saw this like crazy wild guy win Homecoming King at Warwick Vets. And I'm like, I could do that. That's easy. I'm cooler than that guy. That's how you justified
using campaign funds to buy everybody lunches all the time.
I didn't have campaign funds.
This is for campaigning, I swear.
All right, so that's why I didn't get into politics, because there's no money in high school. In high school, the only currency is kindness.
You clearly weren't paying enough attention.
You can't embezzle kindness.
We definitely had the whole class treasurer ran off with the cash happen at our high school. I think in two of the years I was there.
Definitely 2 years. Yeah, no, I'm trying to, I don't know. I mean, I can't. I was also the president of the knitting club at URI. And that's the reason why there's no more knitting club at URI.
That and they were a gang, but yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's that, but they gave me all this money, and then, like, when I didn't use it, I'm like, well, I tried. Nobody's into knitting in 2005. So
URI, though, to be fair, was just handing out cash hand over fist to anybody that wanted. If anybody out there wants to make a quick buck, go to a college campus because they'll just throw it at you out the friggin' door. I remember one time when they tried to give me money to build a set for Will Ferrell, and then I realized that he didn't need it to be done because the last college he had been to had thrown a bunch of money at somebody to build a set, and that college was just Boston University, not an hour and a half away. So I was like, we're just going to rent from them, and we're just going to save a bunch of money, and then we're not going to tell anybody, and we're going to take that money, and we're going to make sure that, because they said anything you don't spend, you can keep. So I was like, all right, well, we're not going to do shit. We're going to just rent all of this from Boston University and keep the rest, and we did just that.
That's thinking smart. That's why we do a podcast together. I still don't know what this episode is. Other two Devon Decker rules are, this one seemed like it should have been a rule, and it's weird that it had to become a rule, is no students allowed in faculty areas of the school without faculty.
I mean, it's in the name. It's a faculty
area.
Yeah,
right? It's one of those things where I can't believe they actually had to add it to the charter the way that they did. But that's because there was this spiral staircase between the bottom floor of the library and the upper floor of the library. And that's the staircase I always took to go upstairs because there's nobody in the library. The halls are full of people. And I could just wait until like the last minute and get to class on time. So I did that. I became an expert at people dodging. That was my big. Don't think that I don't have a PhD in people dodging, Sejohn. But also, here's the other thing. They had this beautiful hallway that went from the front of the school to the back of the school, and I'm like, there's no students in the hallway by the teachers thing. So what I would always do is I'd make it look like I was running an errand, like, oh, I was told to drop this off for X, and then I'd just go on my way, right? I always had a piece of paper for a teacher ready to go. I was smart about it. The reason why it became one of the hallowed Devon Decker rules was because they physically removed that spiral staircase. And that was like, the only reason they removed it was because Devon Decker used it all the time. Like, the vitriol in the voice. I could just hear it the way that she told me, like, yeah, they're convinced you're the reason they got rid of that staircase. And then the last rule, And again, I still can't believe this had to be a rule, and it's related to the Homecoming King thing. You need to be a student to win Homecoming King. Because, I mean, you know Jay, right? I'm not going to give Jay's last name because of his line of work now, and I wanted to just make sure. But he was 2 years under me in school. So his senior year, as a joke, he's like, oh, we should just all write in Devon's name. And that somehow got around to the point where I wound up on the legitimate ballot for Homecoming King. And then I won. Now, I gotta tell you, I have to be honest with you. That should have been stopped a lot sooner along the way. Like, when the people are calculating the write-in votes, first of all, I have to be the only write-in vote candidate for Homecoming King that ever won. I mean, I have to be the only one that ever happened in the entire history of Coventry High School. Maybe the entire history of high schools in general.
I mean, Mickey Mouse must have won at least once in all of his time, right?
No, but I feel like Mickey Mouse, they just ignore. But, like, they see my name, and apparently I got 40% of the write-in vote. So they're like, yeah, we'll add him to it. And then he won't win, though, right? Like, it's just a funny thing to have Devon's name on the final ballot. And then it goes forward, and I win.
It's just a series of people being like, oh, this would be funny if we let this happen, right? And then eventually it gets to a point where somebody's like, wait
eventually it gets to a point where I get a phone call from the head of the student council at Coventry High School, all the places I went to school, and they're like, why are you still doing this? And I'm like, I'm in college. What are you talking about? And they're like, you expect us to believe you had nothing to do with this? And I'm like, I still don't know what this is. So, you want to tell me? And I go, I had nothing to do with that. But, like, should I be at the game to accept the crown? Or
I had nothing to do with that, but now it's happened. What
do we do? How do we proceed with this? So that was fun. That's it. So, yeah. That's a rule. Like, that's a rule. You have to be a student to win Homecoming King. What'd you think? No brainer.
Yeah, but nowadays you can't let anything just go just because you assume it's common sense, man.
Right. And that was 2006. Think about 2019.
And now I'm sad. World. Instantly sad.
Oh, I didn't mean to make you instantly sad. I can make you sadder, but I don't think you saw the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, and I don't want to spoil it for you.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll take that as a tacit endorsement of the film then. No, I didn't see that this week. We been spending some time doing some more holo watching, and I got my hands on a new game that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. It's not a new old game, I should say. But what have you been up to? What have I been up to?
I got my fastest clear time in Castlevania Symphony of the Night ever. Just today, 1 hour, 34 minutes, and 13 seconds, which I didn't farm for Chrissy. Someone told me just get the Alucard shield, and I had to do that in the Saturn version, because the Saturn version is a fucking dick sucker. A week ago, I said that it's probably the definitive version of the game. I actually stand by that it's the definitive version of the game in a lot of ways.
And the game is just a dick-sucking game? Is that what we're doing?
Okay, so for years, we all talked about, if you have played Symphony of the Night's re-release on PlayStation 4, then this is going to sound like I'm crazy. But in the before time, the PlayStation version of that game, when you confronted Maria at the heart of the castle, she just gave you holy glasses, and you went on your way.
Right.
In the Saturn version, she fights you.
Okay.
And the strongest weapon... What?
Wait. What's the justification? Wait, what?
What's the justification?
Was she shitty to you in the past? And she was like, blah, here's some glasses, and then ran away? Or she was like,
so
it needs 4 eyes?
It's...
or what?
Well, it's Japanese, so, there's only translation of it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, so I thought you were about to ask me to do a Japanese voice. I was going to be
No,
like, Devin, there's a reason that didn't happen the first time.
Yes, good point. No. So it's only in Japanese, so I couldn't read what the actual beef was between them.
Okay.
But a lot of the game is Alucard runs into Maria because she is looking for Richter Belmont, the hero of the game that came directly before Symphony of the Night, Rondo of Blood. And she's initially distrustful of Alucard because she can tell that he's otherworldly. He's half vampire. It makes sense that she would feel that way. And then it's revealed...
Spoiler. Yeah.
And then, the big reveal that not only is he half vampire, he's Dracula's son. Spoil it! His name is Dracula Backwards.
That's my favorite. It's my favorite stupid thing that's ever happened ever in video games.
Well, I mean, it's from a movie. It is from a movie, like an early 30s movie, Dracula, son of Dracula. His son was Alucard. But the fact that they're like, yeah, we're going to run with it. We're not going to give him like a cool name.
Yeah, it might have existed before, but the game gave it credence.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So there's this thing where she's like, Alucard runs into Richter and he's like, he called himself the Lord of this castle. I don't know if he's still the person you believe that he was before. And then, like, you run into Richter a couple more times, and his whole thing is, I want to be a hero forever. I was a hero when I defeated Dracula the first time. If I'm able to resurrect him and kill him again, I'll be a hero again. Basically, Backdraft. Basically, Symphony of the Night presents Richter's storyline as Backdraft.
But something's going on with Richter, right? Like, don't you find out that he's
so that's what... So what it is you go to the heart of the castle, and you confront Maria, and she's like, I am... adamant that there is something going on with him. Here, take these. They allow you to see evil auras. Right. And then when you wear the holy glasses in the fight against him, you see a little orb that is controlling his actions. And if you defeat the orb without doing any damage to him, it's revealed that he was possessed.
Right.
And he had to possess him because the blood of a Belmont was required, blah, 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 blah. So... in this one, it seems like she is wholeheartedly convinced that Alucard is still going to kill Richter. So It's sort of, this is my final stand against you so that you do not kill him.
Okay, so it is
because
justified
I believe that I can save him.
This fight happens,
right?
So, like it's foreseeable. Okay,
yeah.
I thought this was something that was just out of left field. They just needed another boss fight because Saturn.
Right. No, I mean, Saturn also has 2 other boss fights that are really cool. You fight a skeleton army, and you have to fight the skeleton lord. So it's like really much like the Deacons from Dark Souls 3, a game I know you haven't played, but so
I
it's
know the Deeks though.
Yeah, of course. They're a very well-known fight because it's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it adds that whole thing, and honestly, that might just be how I interpret it because I have not played a version with English writing for a while. It very well could be the fact that Maria says to Alucard, I'm going to go save Richter, and Alucard's like, yeah, you're not strong enough to beat him, so then she fights him to prove her strength.
It could be. Yeah.
Like, it could
that's a very anime reason.
That's a very anime descriptor of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the fight in the Saturn version, she's a monster. The strongest weapon in the... Okay, spoilers for Symphony of the Night, because there's 2 castles. The first castle's strongest weapon is the Holy Rod. And Maria, because she is a force for good, completely immune to the Holy Rod. So you need to find... There's a weapon called the Mormagil in the catacombs that actually, like legitimately, I was doing 100 damage to her every time I hit her. So
what kind of weapon is the Mormagil?
The Mormagil is a dark sword.
Oh, okay.
So it's a sword drenched in darkness, I believe, is the flavor text. So
awesome.
Yeah, so you use that to beat her, and it's cool because like you said, Saturn, it requires you to do more exploration through the castle because even though you've gotten to Maria, you don't have the weapon required to defeat her if you've been just plowing through to do it as fast as possible, which is what I was doing. I don't explore. I know exactly where I need to go in order to finish that game. And then, yay, I beat Maria eventually. that fight was still a monster because she gives herself a shield, and you can only hit her by down slashing between the bits of the shield.
Oh god.
Like, it was an awesome fight, but the fight has been completely reworked for the PlayStation 4 re-release version that is based on the PSP version of the game.
Okay.
Where it is just Maria from Rondo of Blood. So she throws doves at you and occasionally summons one of her animal friends, but you can just catch her in the corner and kill her.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very easy fight in that one.
So at what point does this game start to really kind of chap your ass? Like,
that was the point. The fight against Maria was the first point because I had to completely change it. And then the second point is I tried to get the Grimm sword, which you get from Shmooze in the Dark Library or the Upside Down Library. I don't remember the exact title of it. And it's a very low drop rate item, but I think the most Shmooze I've ever had to kill to get it is like 206. I killed 500 Shmooze when I got there, and no drops happened.
Ooh.
So I'm like, oh, so they might have rescaled this, or they might have changed how drops work in this. And it's why I'm like, well, everybody tells me I should be using the Alucard shield anyway, so let's go find that, and then let's use that. So then I did that, and oh my god, the Alucard shield, super overpowered if you get the shield rod.
Nice.
By holding it out in front of you, it does 255 damage to everything, regardless of elemental power. And every bit of damage you do heals you 8 points.
Okay.
So, yeah. And it's really not that hard to get to. I thought that it was behind the fight against death. It's right before the fight against death. So you can plow through that game. Excuse me. You can really plow through the game if you get the Alucard shield. So then I'm like, well, I got to try it in the old PlayStation version. Maybe it's not that good. Maybe it's just the Saturn version makes it viable. No. It's viable. It's probably my new strategy.
Nice.
Since I cut off an hour on my clear time by doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you're not farming for that damn sword, right?
Yeah.
That's good.
As much as I love that sword, also, the sword, it's one of those ones that does low damage, but it hits 4 times for every time that it hits. So it's really DPS that does the damage.
Yeah.
In terms of the Alucard shield, the DPS is 255 damage per second. So even that is going to be better.
Yeah, man. Jeez.
So that was my thing with that. Again, I saw Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. I already gave you my tacit review there. I'm going to say it here, though. Usually when I don't like a movie, I'll say that it was a movie. It wasn't a sandwich. In my humble opinion, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot is a big old sandwich.
Okay. All right.
And once you see it, we can talk about it further. And I actually look forward to it because I'm curious if it was me or like the fact that I had gone through the journey leading up to it. I'm curious why it affected me as negatively as it did. I understand why the films affected me negatively, which I guess coda to that whole thing. I internalized a lot of good things from those movies. So my crisis of self was, did I also internalize some negative things? And it took me a week to figure out that no, I didn't. I took the good. I was able to filter out the bad. I have a working pop culture kidney. Yay, God.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because I mean, since we've already started talking about it again, it has been hard to not think about that conversation from last week. And I've just come to the realization that just like, yeah, like overall, like there's a bunch of shitty stuff from the 90s that I'm gonna have to come to terms with personally, as like this built me up as a person, and now I have to consider the fact that these are not great. You know, the example of that I always used to think about would be True Lies. I loved that movie when I was a kid, and now watching it, I like have a lot of major issues with that movie, and to the point where when Captain Marvel takes a shot at it, I jumped up in my seat in the theater, like I cheered.
I also cheered, but that's because I thought that Jamie Lee Curtis was Annette Bening. I'm a dumb.
Oh man, but like, yeah. So just coming to terms with that sort of stuff is just something that we're gonna have to do. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
like as 30-year-old, white males, we live in a very certain space in this world right now that we have to deal with in our own way.
Right.
And I'm glad that you were able to get over it though, man. Because like I don't think that liking that stuff in the past made us bad people. You know,
Right. And
but we have to figure
that's
out.
exactly what I had to filter through was like,
Yeah.
no, I mean, the fact that as an adult I can look at those things and identify them as problems sort of means that I never really internalized them, because I'm
Right.
not mad at myself, I'm mad at the movie for having that. And I think another big part of it came from the fact that, like, Mallrats, which is kind of the worst offender of the three that we
Yeah.
watched on last Friday or 2 Fridays ago, also came out the year that Hackers came out. And I watched Hackers for a year, right? I watched Hackers every Friday for a year, and you'll get to hear more about that on our next very special episode. And that movie is progressive, but it doesn't really have any of that negativity that was so rampant in Mallrats.
It has some stuff it has to deal with. The casual way that it deals with some ideas about like trans like life and like identity are pretty. We'll talk about it more when we watch that movie, but to a point, it is much more. You know, we'll talk about it more when we
Yeah,
watch
we'll
that
talk
movie.
about it more when we do it. But yeah, but I think it's one of those things where, like,
Because I think it's hard. You'd be hard pressed to find something from any era that isn't stuck in its time, even when it is progressive. Which I think is the same conclusion we came
which
to.
is the same conclusion we came to on Monday. But my nostalgia from the 90s had been pretty much in my face. Hackers, just by watching it 52 times. And then to go back to the 90s and be like, oh, not everything is Hackers.
No.
Not everything is Hackers.
For sure, man. Yeah, we'll take a deep dive on that for sure, though. And it's even something though that we still have to deal with, even with movies that are coming out today. It's funny that you mentioned like coming to terms with having to figure out like, am I weird for still kind of enjoying this thing? I saw Abominable the past week, right before it became like the movie to boycott.
Oh God, why is it a movie to boycott?
Well, so. It was so I sigh because I'm still trying to figure myself out on this. But essentially, Abominable is a new film from Dreamworks. But the big thing about it is that it was made in association with what used to be Dreamworks
Oh, I got you.
Asia, Dreamworks Orient. It's Pearl now is the name of the company. And very specifically, so Pearl is a Chinese company, and everything that's going on right now with China and the way that they're kind of stamping down on some of the stuff going on with Hong Kong, and the way that Blizzard has handled itself in the wake of that, and the NBA has handled itself in the wake of that. China's a hot button issue right now, right?
Yes, very much so. I feel like an idiot for not considering that was probably the source of the boycott.
Yeah, and lo and behold, a movie made predominantly by Chinese animators happens to feature some controversial imagery. Very specifically, the map that is included in the film of China features a very predominant borderline that is referred to as the 9-dash line or 10-dash line, depending on the translation, that goes down kind of towards Vietnam and in the sea, and essentially claims a lot of Vietnamese land as its own. So China's got some issues with understanding how borders work, but that's a whole other conversation. So Vietnam, came out and said, hey, they included this border that has been really contentious and they know is not proper in this film, so we're not going to allow it in theaters. And they actually pulled it. And then on top of that, the social media nonsense then jumps on that, right? All these people that have never thought about the fucking borderlines between Vietnam and China before in their life suddenly have an opinion about it. And they've decided that because, in their words, Dreamworks is bootlicking China by including this image in the film, they have decided they do not want to be. And that is a quote from like a headline.
Yeah, I believe that. That doesn't surprise me at all. I saw the South Park episode Banned in China. Yeah. And then I've also, it's hard not to, especially since we have our fingers on the pulse of popular culture, it's hard not to notice it. Yeah. And it really says something that you say that there's a boycott of Abominable, and my mind goes to such worse things. Not that this is a lesser thing by any means, but I'm thinking that like someone said something racist who made the movie, or it was revealed that, you know, it wasn't an all Asian cast, or, and like all the stuff that I thought of before even thinking about this thing that has just been so steady in the background that I've already become numb to it.
Yeah.
Like it's I mean, I remember
and I don't want to sound flippant about the idea of like Tibet having an issue with this, or sorry, Tibet is also Tibet is also in the middle of this. Tibet, Hong Kong, and now Vietnam are the three that are. So Vietnam has this issue with this borderline, a legitimate like geopolitical concern of like this is a border that is super, like we have time and again like had to defend and fight as being part of our land. Like that is a completely legitimate reason. The thing that really irks me is the person online, the Reddit user, the fucking Instagram nonsense of just like, don't go see this movie. And it's like, you okay, if you want to be a part of this fight, like let's do this thing. Let's get out there. You know, like I cannot stand last minute activism just because it's all clearly tied up in anti-establishment bullshit of like I'm just a teen and angsty nonsense. Like it's really, really hard for me to parse out these feelings right now, because a lot of what's going on with this stuff with America and the way that it's reacting to this stuff in China feels so of the moment. Like I feel like in 3 weeks everybody's going to be numb to it.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the reasons why I say numb, like, is I don't want to lessen the importance of this. Like I really do think that it's insane that, because this is the thing, right? We start by letting them levy, you know, what is and what isn't acceptable in media, right? And the things that they're saying, like, no, we're not going to allow it, and the stuff that the NBA has been doing to kowtow to it, like, these are all legitimate concerns. But the scary thing is, you know, first they came for my popular culture and I said nothing.
I know, and it's hard, right? Because you got to find that balance. Because like on the one hand, I want to be supportive of the idea of people tuning in, people learning, and becoming part of the fight to make right is important. Like you need to turn people over. So I don't mean to like reject anybody's right to form an opinion. It's just that to jump on this movie in particular for this one moment with an image that had been in theaters for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it came out on the 27th of September. So
it had been in theaters for a couple of weeks before this had even come out, and then suddenly it was like this move to do it, and then there's a whole bunch of, and then it bleeds into the critical side of things, where people talking about the movie now suddenly are just like, it's not good enough anyway, and it becomes this really weird conversation, because before this had come out, there had been a lot of real interesting talk about like, hey, this is a good little movie. Like, it's not the best that DreamWorks has ever done, but if you take the nature of the film, what it actually means for DreamWorks, and the idea that it was actually predominantly made by this Chinese company and all this, is actually like a huge thing, because there's this beautiful, rich history with China and film, and actually the history of DreamWorks. Because like there was a move, I want to say 12 years ago at this point. When was the first Kung Fu Panda? 2007?
Kung Fu
2008?
Panda was 2006.
Yeah, somewhere in that vein, Kung Fu Panda comes out, and it becomes a #1 movie all over the globe, and in fact takes like the Chinese film market by like storm. And it becomes actually like a thing that's talked about. And I'm paraphrasing on this, but the quote that goes around is, how was an American animation studio able to capture the culture of China in a way that Chinese animators had not yet been able to do? And it becomes like a mandate by the government there, because of course the government is involved in like creating film and all. Right. They're like, you guys need to get on the ball and get this figured out. And what ends up happening is the formation of DreamWorks. I believe it's called DreamWorks Asia is the name of the company over there, and they become a pretty good, you know, side company for a lot of like background work to get done for DreamWorks shows and movies and all this stuff. And so this is them kind of like stepping out of that, taking what they learned from DreamWorks and moving and taking that next step. So from an artistic standpoint, from somebody that's super interested in media and film and entertainment, like it's actually like a super kind of important move. And so this movie is hugely important, and it's so ingrained in Chinese identity, culture, right? And it beautifully displays all of that in so many great ways, that despite the fact that I think that it's lacking in a couple of places in terms of like the story is a little slow going, it's also a little tropey and things like that. But that's okay, because all of this other stuff they're getting right, and they're firing on all cylinders in the places where they kind of need to be. And so the movie works really well for me, and I enjoy it and I like it. And then to come from that and to hear somebody talking about they're going to boycott it because they never, first of all, were going to see it in the first place. They're just looking for a reason to be angry about something. And now on top of that, they're latching onto this thing that, again, in 3 weeks, I find it hard to believe they're still going to be a part of. It just all kind of balls up in this in this like negative energy in me, and it sucks because meanwhile, in all of this, there's people actually learning stuff about China for the first time and realizing, oh, we should be putting a stop to this, or we should be making these changes, and that's important. And I feel like one is making the other really murky and really muddy and not letting each other grow. Like those two conversations should be happening, but the way that they're kind of meshing in this moment is really upsetting to me.
I mean, it sounds like the internet problem in a nutshell. Because, like, people can have a legitimate complaint about it. I mean, I think on some level, this is a hot button topic, and I will say beforehand, I'm a huge proponent of the female Ghostbusters movie from 2016. Ghostbusters Answer the Call is a good movie. But I feel like some of the people who were upset about that remake were upset about this thing that is coming to a head in Hollywood right now, where if we're not creating new ideas, eventually we'll have nothing left to reboot and remake, right? Like, if we just keep going back to the well will be dry.
Yeah, although, I mean, they're going to be the first ones to buy a ticket to the yet other reboot that is now going to come out of the series. So,
right, that's very true.
Yeah,
but I feel like where that argument got muddied was all of these people who were like misogynistic assholes who were like, I'm mad at this movie because it's women.
Yeah.
And it's like, so it's like on some level, there is a legitimate conversation that should be had here about remaking these movies and just trying to cash in on the nostalgia of it and what that will mean for art and creativity going forward.
And
but as soon as you muddy
I'll be the first person to say, I mean, and just to keep the concept going, I'll be the first person to say that Ghostbusters 2016, Ghostbusters Answer the Call, right?
Yep.
That is my Ghostbusters movie. Like, plain and simple. I grew up with two really more than any of them. Like one was one that I was aware of, but two was the one that was on TV all the time, much more family friendly. So that's the one that was always on, like, you know, WB afternoons and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, I grew up with two and I enjoyed two, but it wasn't until Ghostbusters 2016 comes out that I really kind of jumped in on the fandom, when I was suddenly like, I want to get back to watching the cartoons. I want to read the comics. Like that's what really kind of drew me into that world, right? Saying that movie's got a ton of problems. Like I have some real issues with the way that Leslie Jones's character is portrayed in that, and part of it is that it's her style of comedy, but part of it is also that, like, she's just playing yet another black archetype that we all agreed, like, Winston was a huge issue in the first one when this was like, why was this the choice for this character, you know? And in some of the ways that it talks about how it's empowering women, but every woman in it has some type of abuse story, is really, like, there's no just powerful woman just because she gets to be powerful. There always has to be some man that is leading to her empowerment in that film. So, like, there are totally legitimate things to talk about with that movie. There are completely legitimate things to talk about with that movie. But I'm forced to take this side of, like, no, the movie's either perfect or it's useless, and that sucks. That should not be the
perception of it. Is if you don't like it, it means all of these other negative things that the internet proudly claimed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So bringing it back to Abominable, I'm stuck in that same boat. I'm either this person that's going to sit here and defend this movie as if I'm like some ignorant idiot that doesn't see these issues with it, because I'm being forced into this weird position that people are now taking. They can't take it and look at the fact that, like, look, yes, it was made by this Chinese company and it has this really problematic moment in it, but you have to consider so many things about this. All of the people that worked on it that are in this position, that they very well are not empowered enough to make certain decisions about things like border lines. For all we know, like, I don't know enough about, like, image regulation and things like that in Chinese cinema. And as we mentioned earlier, half joking, like, it is run by the government. Like, Chinese entertainment is in fact, like, funded by and run by and moderated by the government over there. Like, who's to say that if they didn't include this map, this particular type of map of China, maybe this movie doesn't get made?
Yeah, who's to say that they don't show it without that, and the government says you messed up on this border here?
Yeah, right.
And then they're like, you need to repair this before it goes out.
Like, there's so much going on here. Like, so is it a question of do we then not make this movie? Like, that becomes a weird conversation. Like, no, like art deserves to be made, no matter how controversial it is, and then people get to then pick it apart and talk about it after the fact. But this idea of boycotting a movie because the animators that live in a certain cultural part of the world expressed their culture is a really shitty stance to take.
I think you and I and the other, well, I think it was 15 people in that class, so the other 13 people who took that course with us are probably uniquely equipped to deal with this situation because
The world cinema class that we took, or
that
which,
yeah,
which
the Cuban cinema class.
yeah.
Because we took what we signed up for was it was what Spanish
It was a Spanish
cinema,
credit,
right?
right? It was a Spanish credit, and it was supposed to be a class basically for dum-dums like us that couldn't actually speak another language but could still get a foreign language credit.
Right.
Because, again, you or I just throwing money at people left and right.
Right, exactly. But when we took it, it was specifically called Spanish Cinema and the World, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
I think that's what it was. And then it was the professor's choice to focus specifically on Cuban cinema. And I know that I learned so much, and that all of those memories are flooding back as you talk about what it means to have China regulating entertainment in the country,
Right.
in that country, because so many movies that we saw, like the one that I love, No, which is the one set in the post office,
Right,
that
right,
I
right.
said was Cuban Dear God. And that, like, oh my God, the pearl grasping from the professor when I said that. I'm like, no, I mean, that's a good thing. Like, it's good that I'm comparing it to a movie like
God.
that. And I did get what you're talking about, but that movie, like, it's got a lot of things like Cuba friggin' sucks, but they hid it in all of this, like, slapsticky, weird propaganda that Cuba's awesome, so that the
Right.
government would allow them to release it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, there's a level of sarcasm going on that like government officials are too dull to understand, which was phenomenal, right? Yeah, I mean, and that becomes the thing, right? Is like I think we talked about this before in the past. Is it becomes a question about the idea of representation and is it worth it if it's bad representation, right? Like I think that's the real conversation to have. So this has become a movie that is now about Chinese culture in this really big step forward because that's the focus that I've chosen to take on it, right? So now the question is it good representation of that culture? And if it isn't, is it worth it as a film? And I think it's a pretty overall decent representation of that culture and that understanding. I mean, the family life that is shown for the main character, Chloe Bennett's character. Why can't I remember her name right now?
Uh, Jade? Is that it's something
Yeah,
like that?
it's Ping or something. It's
not
something.
Ping.
No, is Ping the kid?
Yes, Ping is the
Yeah.
little boy.
Okay. Yeah. But there's that whole there's that whole side of the movie that is about her life and about her doing all of these jobs to raise this money so that she can try and get out of this really really tiny one room apartment that she shares with her grandmother, her mother, and her, right? And she has this escapism that she has up on the roof. She plays violin, and the everything about it was super interesting and super cool and was definitely very informative, right? And the map, when you see that map, and now that I know to look for it, like seeing that thing there is actually kind of interesting, but also I'm a 32-year-old man watching this versus the 8-year-old 3 seats away, so what are they picking up from it? That's an important conversation as well. But that being said, I think people should see it and then have that conversation. I don't think that people should not see it,
Well, here's the thing. This is something that I was unaware of. I will be the first person to say I was unaware that, I mean, the extent of my knowledge of Asian land wars is Wallace Shaw in The Princess Bride. The first is never go up in a land war with an Asian, but the second, less known, is never go against a Sicilian when death is on the line, right? Like, and I got that because I knew from history that it was a lot of fighting about borders and things. I know about the Huns. I know why the Great Wall was built. I know all of that from history, but then to be told that there's still this thing going on over there, that is a huge point of contention between two active contributing countries in the global world theater, that blows my mind. Like, this is the kind of stuff that we should be talking about all the time. This is the kind of thing that they would do in an episode of Sports Night, because Sports Night is the best thing. But it'd be like, they'd find out this little thing as they're doing it, and they'd want to focus on it, and they'd be like, no, that's not what this show is about. But it's like, but do you not understand that, like, there's still an active territory and border war going on the other side of the globe?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an issue that it's really interesting that we don't want to talk about that with our kids, right? Like that seems to be the conversation. Like don't bring your kids to see this movie. It's going to introduce them to this idea, and it's like, well, okay, maybe they should be introduced to this idea so that they can figure out for themselves how they feel about everything that's going on right now, specifically with Hong Kong and the idea of whether or not China runs this area of the world or not. Like that's a huge thing that they're going to need to be aware of, especially as we have more and more generations that grow up on the internet, the ultimate globalization tool. Like and I'm not taking a stance one way or the other on the idea of globalization, but I cannot deny the fact that we are just going to become more globalized as generations become more and more used to the fact that they can just be a hop, skip, and a jump away from another culture, and so like,
that's what my social studies class was in 7th grade, was how our world is shrinking because of the internet. So that was what, 1999? Yeah. No, that 1998. And our teacher was trying to get through our minds how our world is shrinking because of the awesome power of the internet. So 20 years later, like, it's still there and it's still something that exists, but now we want to hide it away from people. We don't want to look at the dirtier parts of that, but we should look at it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, when the Hong Kong stuff first started, because it's also not new, and I think that might be the other reason why I kind of have gone numb to it, is it seems like this is the thing that I heard about months ago, and now it's just reaching into these pockets of the internet that I also have other interests in. So it seems like other people are learning about it. And suddenly,
because everybody started to care once an American company like Blizzard got involved, really was the big part of it. Yeah.
But there was like the whole thing about Mulan. It was the Mulan actress coming out in support of the Chinese government. And I remember we had a very large debate about it over at a friend's house. And someone's like, what you need to understand is she might not believe what she's saying, but her life could be on the line.
Right.
Like, it's one of those things where
at the very least her lifestyle is like, as an actress in China, that would disappear if she lost the ability to act in Chinese film.
Right, exactly. Like it could be that she actually believes everything that they're saying, but it is equally as possible that the Chinese government is leaning on her to toe their message because she is speaking to an American audience.
Yeah.
And they're hoping that if she's okay with it, well, then everyone will be okay with it.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things where I'm like, yeah, both sides of this has a lot to say, but right now I cannot find any more information about it. So I need to wait until there's more. And then as more comes out, it's like, well, yeah, it's kind of weird that Hollywood, and we've talked about how is it about money or is it about artistic vision, and all of these movies that are like, yeah, no, we'll do what China wants in terms of standards of film in order to keep having our movies shown there.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be a Pacific Rim 2 if Pacific Rim 1 wasn't as popular as it was in China.
Yeah.
There's no Step Up 6 in America, but China loved Step Up 5, and there's an all-Asian production, Step Up 6.
Didn't Dragon Ball get a sequel specifically in Asia? I think the Dragon Ball film that tanked in America did so well in Asian markets that it got a sequel that was then only premiered in Asian markets.
Yeah, I would believe that. Yeah. I don't have anything to support that, but it's one of those things where I know for a fact that there is a Step Up 6 and I believe a Step Up 7. And it was because they're like, these are huge over here. We're going to keep making them. And they're like, yeah, keep doing it. That's fine. You don't need Channing Tatum? That's fine.
Yeah, I again, like, you fall into the trap of talking about like things like whataboutism and stuff like that, and you don't want to be comparing apples to oranges in these conversations. So like people need to make their own personal choices. If somebody out there feels they want to boycott Abominable because they feel really strongly about this idea um, of this borderline, this border quarrel that was going on between quarrels that seems to not do it justice, but you know what I mean, between Vietnam and China. Like, if you feel strongly about that, then yeah, feel strongly about that. Express that. The thing that I'm having trouble struggling with right now as somebody out there that's a fan and is trying to justify his fandom and his love of these things is like, I think that right now I'm in a place where I really want to be kind of supportive of the artists that made this film and these people that are in this position, that they're not the kinds of people that get to decide what is allowed to be in this film. They are not in a position to say no to this and that right now. I want to support them to get them to a place where they can finally be. You know, who's to say that the artist that works on Abominable now can't 10 years down the line make a really productive film that does something? They just need that opportunity to get there. You know, that's where I'm at.
Right. And again, we don't know. We've talked about this central theme in Hollywood where the dollar is what talks. And so it's why boycott culture exists, right? Because you look at, I mean, we did a whole episode speaking to like DC doesn't care that people don't like its movies because they make the money that makes them happy.
Yeah.
We had that discussion. But if a movie like Abominable, which as far as I know, I don't believe it's performing that great. I know a bunch of the theaters around here showed it for a week and then it was gone. So that's all that I can discuss. Who's to say that, like, because this movie fails, since you're not seeing it because of this boycott over this thing, somebody who worked on that never gets to work again? I mean, that's what you're saying. I'm just putting it into other words so that I can fully grasp the weight of that situation.
Yeah.
That, like, it failing because you're trying to boycott something that might not have even been this person's choice, right?
Yeah.
Like the screenwriter, I don't know. I don't know. You've read screenplays. You've read scripts. Do you think that the direction says a map of China is shown and we make sure to include the...
No. I mean, you know, part of it also makes me laugh because this could be, you know, this is definitely me putting my own personal shit on it. But like, if I just lazily just was like, all right, I need a map of America and just looked it up really quick and then put it up and somebody was like, you realize that this map has Louisiana like backwards, right? No, I didn't look that closely when I put it into the damn thing. I'm sorry. I would have hoped somewhere along the line somebody in editing would have been like, hey, maybe this thing should be fixed.
But no,
Nope.
Backwards Louisiana wins Homecoming King, and Backwards Louisiana is blamed for it. Poor Backwards Louisiana. I really wish I had enough in me to say Louisiana backwards. I'm pretty sure it's like Anna So Azul. Yeah.
We'll take it. Yeah.
Oh, jeez. So is this what you had to talk about? Did you have other stuff as well? Or because I kind of feel like we just stumbled into this discussion.
No, I wanted to talk about Abominable for
excellent.
sure.
I'm glad.
You know, so for my Hollow video game playing, I decided to dive into Earthbound. Somebody mentioned to me when I was asking like, what are some good Halloween games? They couldn't really think of any specific Halloween games, but they were like, you know what game's really weird and can be kind of Halloweeny? And so I went digging for a ROM, and you were kind enough to provide one today.
Yeah, that's definitely what we should do. Let's admit to crimes on our podcast.
We need to surprise.
Allegedly.
Like, you talk about being in a Link to the Past randomizer competitions. Where do you think those come from?
I own the game. No,
yeah. Anyway, so I dug into Earthbound today and started playing it, and I gotta say, like, I wasn't sure at first if I felt like it would really qualify this as like a good Halloween game for me to be playing, but I forgot how friggin' bizarre that game is. Like, it is just really wild. So much so that I don't know how much of it I really played as a kid, because, like, first of all, story beats happen instantly in that game. Mm-hmm. Like, it just like, hey, we introduced this character, Buzz. You got into one fight with him. Hey, guess what? He's dead. Oh, what? Like, there's just really bizarre things. Like, you pick up characters in your party and then suddenly they're gone. They don't fight when you're in fight scenes. Like, it's just really, really, really wild. And so I think it does kind of qualify as a Halloween game, despite the fact that it's not like spooky. It is just really weird, and I think that that works for me.
I mean, there's this Earthbound, the furthest I got in Earthbound, and there is a little part of me that wants to restart Earthbound because I know you're playing it. There is this part of me that wants to do it, but I do know that I'll get to the same point and be like, this is too far for me. Like, it's too much of a logical leap. It's too much of I'm not interested in the game really to keep playing. You eventually get to like a town, a city. You get to a city, and there's like upside down would probably be the best way to describe it for the Stranger Things crowd of that town, where like everything is a negative on the other side.
Right.
And that whole thing happened, and I'm like, how far am I into this game? Like, I'm still not feeling the story, and it's just throwing so much at me.
Well, it's because the story changes instantly. You know, like in the first 5 minutes, you're going out to explore like a meteor falling, and then the next thing you know, you're going and searching for a lost kid, and then the lost kid is just up the hill and not doing anything, so you just bring him home. So that story's over. That's when you meet Buzz, who then you walk into this guy's house, and his mother's just like, "Oh, a bug," and kills it instantly. So it's just like, what the fuck is happening in this game?
Yeah, and so this way that I justified it, and I'm sure there's some article out there or some essay about it, is that Earthbound is truly just kids being kids. Yeah. It's like the South Park Ninja Weapons episode where it's these kids playing. And I can totally see that being what that game is in some way. And what is Halloween if not a night where we celebrate playing pretend?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of playing pretend for sure. And just the non sequitur weirdness, I think, is very Halloween-y, right? And again, that very much comes from that same vein of kids being kids. Like, yeah, oh, and now there's a superhero here because I decided that in this fight with Godzilla, a superhero shows up. Okay, sure, like whatever you say. Which is why I was saying in the chat that I think a really good follow up to that sort of game is something like an Undertale, which I don't think is a big secret. Like that Undertale takes a lot of huge influences from Earthbound, but like the random ways that you can get through that game, you can play that entire game without ever starting a fight, and like you can meet certain characters or never meet them, and you know, like, and it doesn't change whether or not you can finish the game. It's like it's also got that weird creep factor in a lot of weird ways. That smiling flower in the first 5 minutes of Undertale will haunt my dreams for the rest of reality.
I get that. I fought that flower. That's about as far as I got into Undertale.
Shouldn't fight that flower. See, that you've ruined it. You can never go back and not fight that flower now.
Well, what if I uninstall the game?
No, it will maintain knowledge that you have uninstalled and reinstalled the game then, and at that point it'll also assume that you had at least fought the flower at least once.
What if I leave it on Earth and go into orbit and nuke it from space, the only way to be sure, and then start a new one on my space computer?
Well, then yes, because you're now at that point, you're playing on a different IP address, and I think they can't track you.
Oh, okay, good. Plus, is the only way to be sure.
It's the only way.
So I'm guessing you didn't get out to Alien this week?
No, it turns out that it was only playing in like one theater around here, and it was playing at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, what fun is that? Also, I was at work, but yeah. So way to celebrate. But to be fair, it's only like what, the 40. It's like a weird number.
It's the 40th anniversary.
40th anniversary. Like, no, I can wait 10 more years and do a big like go.
I'll make sure that I have like fuck you money in 10 years, so I can go see Alien at 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Who knows? But that's good. I'm glad that you're playing Earthbound. Maybe. I mean, my big thing is I get on the road on Wednesday to drive to Virginia for Speed Gaming Live, and I'm very excited. To do that. Even though, I don't know, I had such a good game of Link to the Past today. I just need to remember that I love the game. Like, I got to get out of my head about like it being a competition and just go to play and be with like-minded individuals.
Yeah, man.
Because I'm excited. I'm excited to do this, and maybe it'll be my swan song, or maybe it will reinvigorate. Maybe it'll refill the cup. But I'm excited to see just the insanity that will be the first like true live tournament of Link to the Past randomizer.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. You'll have to report back.
Oh, don't worry. That's pretty much what next episode's going to be. But not next episode, because the very next episode will be a very special episode about hackers. Yay, hackers.
Yay! Oh, man. Yeah, I'm excited to visit an old movie with you. So you've made sure to watch it every week this year, right?
Yes. I even watched it again on Friday.
So I've made sure to not watch it a single time this year. So this is going to be really good.
Oh, this is going to be fun for me. Excellent. So any final thoughts before we pass her along?
No, Hollow watching stuff, still out there looking for that. Oh, I'm excited because I get to tell you this live on air. I figured out what my next year Hollow watching plan is.
Ooh.
Next year, if I'm doing my math right, and you can again correct me live on air, this will be great if I'm wrong. But I believe next year should be the first year that you can officially watch one Treehouse of Horror episode a day. Every day of Halloween, including next year's broadcasted episode.
Treehouse of Horror 30. Yes, because it is Treehouse XXX. And I'm hoping Vin Diesel shows up. God, that'll be interesting. Have I complained about this on air? I'd like to complain about this on air since you brought up the Treehouse of Horror.
Okay.
So Funko Pop, right? I have my two guys. I'm looking at the Phantom and I'm looking at a Purple Smurf right now. I love them. They mean a lot to me. They did a Treehouse of Horror series from The Simpsons, right?
Oh, okay.
And Marge is Catwoman Marge from the Island of Dr. Hibbert.
Nice.
Homer is King Homer from King Homer, Treehouse of Horror 3.
Yeah.
Bart is Bart with the head of a fly from Fly vs. Fly. Nice. Maggie is Kang's child, so she has the tentacles and the one thing.
Yeah.
Lisa is a demon. She is Demon Lisa. And maybe you can correct me live on air. I don't believe Lisa has ever been a demon in a Treehouse of Horror.
Not that I can recall. I'd have to go looking for it if that's the case. That's a weird pull for her. It's also kind of a weird pull for Homer, I'll be honest. Why is it not Homer in the Jack in the Box or something like that? I guess that's a little too weird for them to make into a Funko Pop. But There's other Homers I definitely would have done before I picked King Homer.
Right. Well, I think King Homer is iconic in the worst way that we want to do these iconic ones. Because the Marge, Bart, and Maggie are perfect.
Yeah.
Homer is you're not wrong in that. Because Homer has the Jack in the Box, that's very funny. Or, if it were one of the clone Homers or even Blob Homer I was a big fan of, even though that wasn't a great episode. But Lisa legitimately just looks like Devil Flanders, but on Lisa. And I'm I can't think of the Treehouse of Horror where this happened.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is I wouldn't have just focused on the main five. If I really wanted to go out and find some really good iconic ones, the Bart Simpson's Dracula version of Mr. Burns when he's dressed like
Gary Oldman, from Bram Stoker
from Roman Polanski's Bram Stoker's Dracula. Yeah.
So that was actually a New York Comic-Con exclusive version of that figure.
That's where I would have gone. I would have gone other characters,
Yes, I mean because again, I think Devil Flanders.
Flanders.
Come on, donut-headed Homer. If we're going to talk about more iconic Homers.
See, that would have been another one where they would have had Homer's had too many weird transformation episodes.
Oh, Homer with Homer as a robot.
I think Homer with the time toaster, even though it's not a different version of Homer with the time toaster would have been amazing.
You dress him as Flanders. You do that from that world
with the toaster in his arm.
With the toaster in his arm. I mean, Bart as the Raven would have also been hella iconic, as opposed to Bart as the Fly.
Oh, but you see, Homer in that poem with the coat on would have been
dressed
a great
as
one.
Yeah. So, but it's this thing where I finally saw them in person on last week. I went to a toy store with some friends, and I saw them in person, and I'm like, all right, we're pretty much Simpsons guys here, right? What is this from? And they knew, all of them, and I'm like, what's this Lisa from? And nobody knew. And I've tried to research it to no avail. I cannot find any proof. as to what that's supposed to be. So, that's fun.
Doesn't she become Queen Lisa of the Tooth People in one of the Treehouse of Horrors?
That would be fine. When she becomes like super strong and she's dressed as Amelia Earhart. And that one also makes sense because the Collector is what Comic Book Guy is in that one, where her and Bart get superpowers from the X-ray machine.
Right.
And Bart gets like stretching powers and she becomes super strong. I don't remember their character names. Lisa as a witch. She's been a witch a bunch of times. Like,
Yeah.
It's just like one of those things where I'm like, you guys knocked it out of the park with at least iconic moments from Treehouse of Horrors for the rest of The Simpsons.
Right.
Weird that Lisa is like a version that I can't even remember ever happening.
Yeah. Well, Funko Pops are
Funko Pops are a whole
money sink.
Yeah, we never even talked about like the fact that Unicron was funded. So like, who knows what and it was funded because at the end of the first month it only had like 2,000 backers and they extended it a month and then they got it up to it. And I'm not entirely unconvinced that if it hadn't like got it by this month that it wouldn't have been extended again. Because they put the time in to build that mold. They wanted to sell it.
Yeah.
But who knows? All right, so I think that's it. I've said my thing, your thing. We'll see you for the Hackers episode. And next week, a big celebration of Halloween and Speed Gaming Live. So look forward to that. If you'd like to talk to me about, I don't know, rules that have been made because of things that you yourself have done, find me on Twitter at Devon D. Decker. I'd love to hear your stories.
And if you want to hit me up with other films and movies that you feel I should boycott, you can get me at Siege versus the World on Twitter.
Until then, Will, it's on you, buddy.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Stephen Selwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.